I had to think through that question a lot because I actually had forgotten, and that's it's so boring that I can't go to concerts anymore, and just forgetting the last one is it's awful because it's
more than a year ago. How long ago?
It is. It's no. It was just before lockdown. Well, sort of our soft lockdown. I think it was February. So actually, I just remembered it when coming here. It's Sabaton.
Yeah, right.
And it's not my favorite band. They're a good live band.
It's okay to like them as well, I think.
But I do remember the first concert that was cancelled, and that was Hammerfall.
Oh, and they were in Sweden, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Wow.
It should have been. It's postponed.
Yeah. And I know there's a crew of several people who's friends, of course, but a little bit friends in the industry that has some typical data or BI connection that has been sort of a concert-going crew for several years.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about the concert community in the BI space? It's a joke, but
I'm not sure if it's a concert community.
No, it's just friends, but I think it's friends. But we happen to several work in the data space.
Yeah. Well, when going to concerts, you meet a lot of people. We're the same bunch of people, and it happens quite a lot that you meet the same people on different concerts, and you get to know them and so on. Both people that you know since before, and then new people you meet there. And quite often they work within IT. So when you go to the concerts I go to, usually rock concerts, then it's usually IT people.
It's funny.
I don't know why. What are your thoughts about that?
No, Goran, we work a lot together and stuff like that. And I know you love to go to concerts, and I kind of like to go to concerts, but I'm not going every time. But I went along with you, I think, and then I met this is this, and then I realized several of you guys we met, but at the Data Innovation Summit, right, at the conferences. Yeah, and then typically you get your Skansen card or what you get your free concert. Gröna Lund, I mean.
Yeah.
Gröna Lund has the Swedish amusement park has a fantastic card, which if you're a member, you can go into the park and then you can see all these fantastic bands for a very small price for a whole year. So that was my last concert. I think one of the Gröna Lund ones last autumn with friends in IT. Let's call it that.
Yeah, and that Gröna Lund is amazing because you can go there if you don't have anything to do. If you want to go out, don't want to go home that evening, you might as well go to Gröna Lund and watch a concert. And it might be something new that you haven't heard before. And you meet people there. It's a nice place to be.
It's nice, yeah.
For a nice summer evening.
Yeah, exactly.
But that is one of the things we can't do anymore, and which is very annoying. But apart from that, I think I miss concerts and I miss travels.
Travel and concerts. Yeah. It's actually, those two is quite. That would be something I would like to do right now as well.
Yeah, I like Gröna Lund as well, but I go to the other part of Gröna Lund called the Dansbands Park.
Okay.
And listen to music there. But anyway, who is Mia?
Oh, that's a difficult question. Well, it's not, but it's difficult to shrink it down to some edgy info to give you. Well, I work in the IT industry. I'm responsible for a company within the Knowit group. And I've been involved in IT companies all my life. But I come from finance from the beginning. Even though my family, my upbringing was that my father's been working for IBM for 35 years, got a gold watch and everything like you did back then. And my oldest brother, he was working for Apple, so they were like competing.
Apple and IBM in the same family. That's nice.
Yes. So I actually had, as I remember, two Lisas and one Macintosh in my room and one IBM computer.
Oh, this is super cool.
I was 12 years old.
And was it always a fight at home on the PC versus Mac?
Sometimes, not always.
Not
sometimes.
always.
And I have to jump to, what do you use today then? What's your favorite laptop that you use today?
I use a proper computer, not Mac.
I like you a lot. Okay, so what's the proper computer?
Well, my personal computer is a Toshiba. I mean, I work with administration today, so I don't need anything expensive.
Yeah. Proper computer, not Mac. That's I think a statement we should put on a T-shirt or something.
Yeah, get it. Yeah, I use the Mac, by the way.
Okay, yeah, I could have guessed. Yeah. So I was brought up in this IT family where IT was a natural thing to work with. That was something that you actually build. You build the hardware, you build the software. That was nothing strange and odd to me.
So I'm my two parents are doctors, and we could have I remember 10 years old, and you have a dinner conversation, and all of a sudden my parents starts talking doctor speak, which essentially means they start talking Latin. Yeah, they start talking about this disease and la 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 in Latin. So was it any computer geek speak at the dinner table? When you grew up, could you have like that sort of IT, or did they keep the work at work? How was it in your family?
Well, first of all, my brother wasn't living in Sweden back then.
Okay.
Obviously, since he worked for Apple, but
and
I was so young. I was 12 years old or something, so I don't remember. But now they have been discussing about which internet protocol.
At Christmas dinner, right?
Yeah. So, but not back then, not as I remember.
No, okay. Cool.
But anyway, I chose the finance path to go, and I started working as a proper bookkeeper. Then it just, I started working for IT education company, and one thing led to another, and you hear things, you learn things, and I suddenly understand that this is quite boring what I do today. So started educating in different things, and took a few courses, and then I ended up doing software development, or at least project managing projects like that.
Before we leave the bookkeeping world, I think something that we all have to do at some point. What do you think about the future of using data and AI or analytics for bookkeeping? Do you think it can be automized in ways?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could be fun even for people that, it is a fun topic for people that are experts in it, of course. Every topic is fun if you're an expert in it, but for people that just do it because they have to, then perhaps it can become a bit more easy and fun in the future?
Yeah, I think the parts that are possible to automate, you should definitely do it, because it's just boring. It's so boring. So, and the fun parts come with when the bookkeeping is done, when you look at the figures, what to do with them, how to improve the company, how to improve the P&L. So, yeah, definitely.
I know some bookkeeping people, and just to talk on their sake, I actually do think it can be fun if you are an expert and really know how to do that properly. So that said, it is, I think, a place where we could automate a lot of things and make it more efficient, at least for a lot of people to do it the right way. Right. Cool. Okay, so you moved over to education, and what type of education did you work with to start with?
Well, I worked for a company called Jönsson & Lepp, which was one of the first educational companies around IT. We were quite big. So I remember one big project I had was to teach one customer how to move from WordPerfect to Word, Microsoft Word.
I remember
so
WordPerfect.
I'm that old.
Me as well. I think WordPerfect was an awesome
it was
software.
It was actually even better, I think, back then.
Yes, sure.
It's happened a lot. So, yeah.
So the education was about, being able to use that type of software?
Yeah. It's basic, how to use Word, Microsoft Word, which was actually what you had to educate your employees in back then in the 90s. Yeah. You don't have to do that anymore. Everyone, even.
You're expected to have that basic.
Definitely. Absolutely.
What do you think about people putting, I have skills in MS Office in their resume? I have a bit of a...
I put that resume away when hiring people.
Yeah. But it's quite interesting. Like, okay, so when we were in the 90s, basic training at Jönsson and Lepp was Word. What is the base?
That was what I started with.
No, but as an example of the times, I was thinking referring.
Okay, yeah.
So if that was the yardstick of the data literacy, where are we today? If this generic training that we want to give broader to our companies to become data literate, is it BI now maybe, or is it, what is it?
If you look at the list of the available trainings on any training company's website, it's huge. It's extremely long. But then I would say that the biggest difference is that you don't have classroom training as much anymore. You are expected as an employee, at least working with IT or any kind of more advanced work, you're expected to learn by yourself. You can follow EDX, Coursera, or whatever the names are. And you are supposed to do your own training. And that doesn't fit everyone.
No.
It's quite difficult.
That's true.
So
Coursera e-learning is not for everyone in that sense. Like for some people, I think it's perfect. Yeah.
Still, the question of like lifelong learning.
Exactly.
We are speaking about, I think, more and more, and the need for that, and that technology is moving so fast, so everyone needs to learn it in general. What's your thinking there? Do you think we should simply make the universities more up to date with the latest technology, or should we change the way people learn things in some way?
I'm not sure. I think that's two questions. Or
I mean, either you can choose to make an investment saying, okay, we want to simply make sure that universities have better education with the right technology in place, and you learn what you need to actually start working with it, or you start moving potentially to a different type of education, which is more lifelong learning type of education, or you combine the two. Or
I think, maybe. I think you need to combine the two, But what you learn when you leave school, I mean, that's obsolete within a couple of years.
So
anyway, whatever you learn. So maybe what universities should be teaching is how to be up to date and how to study technique.
So it's method of learning more
methodology,
rather than the techniques themselves. Sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It goes back to the definition of intelligence we talked about on the on this podcast, several podcasts back. What the one definition of intelligence is the pace. You said it.
Yeah, the efficiency of acquiring a skill is one proper or a new term for or definition of intelligence.
So contrasting knowledge with intelligence, and knowledge. What is knowledge when we can find everything at Google, right? Then it's how can I acquire the knowledge and do something with it, and then this is the way of thinking intelligence.
When I hire people, I focus less and less on what they actually know today. I focus much more on when they have switched assignment and employments earlier. How quickly could they adapt?
I think that's an awesome and very interesting topic. I think we should move to that very soon. And I think also the learning. I mean, you're an expert both in like data and analytics and AI, and also have a background in education. So I think actually that type of discussion, how we really start to move into a future where technology is moving so fast, you continuously more or less need to educate yourself. But before perhaps we move into those, can you just talk a bit more? After the IT education, what were the next steps that you moved into?
Well, the company that I worked for was split up in two different parts: the educational part and then the software part. And building software was much more fun, so I joined that part, and the future was, the possibilities in that area was so much bigger. So I went with that part of the company, and we actually built a software for fund industry that is today a standard product.
For fund industry? What do you mean?
Fund companies.
Pension funds? Or what do you mean with funds?
Investment funds.
Investment funds.
Okay.
Yeah. So we sold this to banks, and but the fund company needs to be a different company within the bank. So it can't be the same as the bank, which is legislation. So we sold it to fund companies, which are like Swedbank has a fund company called Swedbank Robur, for instance, so, or Nordea has Nordea funds. And like that.
How did this tool work? What was the added value that gave to companies like Svebert, Robur, and others?
Well, the main thing was that it was old technology that was in place before this. So we built it in modern Microsoft technology.
.NET or
yes. No, sorry, not .NET from the beginning. It was later on. We built it. This was it was late 90s, early 2000. So it was VB6 actually, the GUI.
Yeah, cool. Visual Basic, that is.
Yes. So I started working with that, building reports, and then I moved on being a project manager, and eventually I became the product manager for that product.
Awesome.
So.
And you still haven't really explained what it did.
A fund is actually there are two parts of a fund.
Is the name of the software called fund, or what do you mean?
No, it's called nowadays it's called TCM.
TCM.
Because we were acquired by Tieto, so it's called Tieto Client Manager. So it handles it when you buy a fund. You have shares in that fund. So that's one part of the fund. The other part of the fund is the holdings in the fund. If it owns shares in H&M or SSAB, etc. So that's the fund side, and then there's a shareholder side. And this product handles the shareholder side. So this product handles if you got 32.78 or 79 shares of that fund or not. And when there's a dividend, when there's tax withholding, etc., this product takes care of that.
So it's an inventory and gives an overview and visualize basically what the fund and the shareholders.
Yeah, and a lot of legislations around it that produces the reports that are sent out to the shareholders, for instance, or the tax authorities.
And it was supported by Tieto, you said?
Yeah.
Cool. And you worked there for some time as well, or?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And the most interesting part that what was actually teared our hearts out when we were acquired was not the thing that we were called Tieto and we were supposed to do just produce things. We lost the company's soul, etc. You can learn a lot from that acquiring, because it wasn't done the best, as most acquirements are.
It is hard to acquire companies.
Yes.
I know that from Spotify days as well. It's not an easy thing to do.
Definitely not. But the worst part was when they changed name, because we had this stupid, silly name, Geometrics. So that was the name of the company. So the product was called ECM, Geometrics Client Manager. But they changed the name to TCM. So they changed the name of our baby, more or less. So it was hurtful. It was hurtful. Yeah. And back then it was, now it's a fun story, but it teaches you a lot about how to treat people, what's important or not. You can understand if, now it's the most important thing is money, we need to survive. This was the beginning of 2001. So money was very important. Working in IT wasn't as good as it was. Changing the name, you don't have to do that. So it's quite interesting.
Cool, but then you moved into some new position rather quickly, right? Was it in Swedbank or what was it?
No, I changed company. I started working for actually the company that I work for today. it was back then a small company called Helikopter. Helicopter Information Management, which was a very popular name back then. We never did, whatever. So I started working there, but in between signing the agreement to the day I started working there, they were acquired by Knowit. So the same story again. So I was quite disappointed.
Because you wanted to work with the smaller company. That was your basic idea that here I want to come back to my family. And then you felt, oh no, it's a bigger company again than I expected.
Until then, I hadn't been working before Tieto, I hadn't been working for a company that was bigger than 100 people before. So I really did want to come back to the small company. So,
and for people that don't know what Knowit is, how would you describe it?
You don't understand what kind of company it is when you look at the web page, because that's one the sort of what you want to show to the customers, because what we are to the customers is one big group of companies, one strong big group that had a lot of skills. Internally and organization-wise, we are divided in 65, I think, daughter companies. And every daughter company, we do whatever we want, we work with whatever we want, we have our own
identity to some degree.
Identity, culture, yeah. So what we can do, what's good is that we can specialize in whatever we work with. And every company can do that. So we don't need to have anyone that is focused on security, for instance, because we have a whole company that is expert in security. So that makes every company very specialized.
So in the end, it's a group of several companies that has a strength together, but also has the familiarity of a niche in each of the individual companies, so to speak, in the group.
Yeah.
And did you know this from the beginning, or was this something you figured out?
No.
How was that journey?
So when I started at Knowit, Helikopter Knowit, my mind was set up to move away as quickly as possible.
Because it's a big company.
Yeah, I don't like the big companies. So, and I was just expecting that within a year or two we were going to be eaten up by this huge dinosaur. So I left for my customer.
Then you went and worked with the customer.
Yeah. So I was working for Swedbank for about 2.5 years. And then I was called up by my previous boss, and he asked me if I wanted to come back, and I can come and see you for an interview. And then I came to the office, and it was exactly the same. So then I decided, why not?
So then you realized, this company, Helikopter, exists still.
Yeah, it does. So I came back. We are definitely more of a Knowit company today than we were back then, but it's been a slowly change. So, and I think that's a much better way to acquire companies than,
integrating them directly, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the Tieto way, because it's not most companies do like they do. So I stayed, and I've been at Knowit since 2012.
And what type of, for people that don't know Helikopter or know it in general, what type of project do you usually work with? Do you have some speciality, or what's your speciality, you would say?
We work in data and analytics area, or BI, if what you used to call it. We take care of the customers' data and structure it and build data warehouses, data lakes, whatever, on-prem or in a cloud solution. And then we present the data in a way that is easily understood and available to everyone that uses it with a visualization tool. Like we work with any tool. It could be Tableau, Power BI.
And you're a rather humble person, and Goran knows this well, and you said, I don't know that much about tech, but in reality you actually do know a lot. And I think it's a lot of ambiguity. What is a data warehouse? What's a data lake? What's Tableau, and what the differences are between working on-prem or in the cloud, etc. But if we start with warehouse versus a lake, how would you describe the two?
I would describe a data warehouse as a very structured database of all the data collected from different sources. Mm-hmm. A data lake is much more unstructured.
Any pros and cons, or when should you use what, in your view?
I think that's when you get to the point where I should turn to one of my colleagues. I could guess a bit, but I think when you have loads amounts of data, and when they come from different sources, maybe not internal sources, a lot of external sources, they change a lot, then a data lake is preferred.
Awesome. And what do you think about the whole cloud movement? It's a lot of companies moving and trying to migrate to the cloud, but it's not always that easy, and there's a lot of other legal issues and whatnot. Any stories or thoughts about should companies try to move to the cloud, or is it better to try to have things on-prem?
I should. That's an interesting question, and I would tick the yes box if that's a yes or no question, but it's not. It's definitely not, because it's much more complicated than that. The first thing you need to decide is that, why? Why do you want this? Is it because your management tells you that we need to move to the cloud? Because I've been talking to my friends, and they have done it in their companies. So, and actually that happens a lot. And then it comes down to the BI manager who has to, or the CIO, or the whatever, who owns the issue, and they had to solve it.
But what you're highlighting is a little bit like, please, dear customers, be super sharp on your data problem, or what this data scenarios you are trying to solve. And then there could be several rationales for going to the cloud, but it's a little bit like the lemmings train.
Yeah.
So because it has some implications on how you do it, or what cloud you choose and all that.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
The sharpness on why is quite important.
Yeah. And most of the people, the customers, the prospects we meet, they are quite skilled. They know exactly what they want, what to do. Yeah. But maybe not the whole organization.
No. So you meet some people who knows this exactly, but for the whole organization, it's not really clear.
No. So,
please.
There's a lot of different cloud providers, of course, out there. Yeah. I guess 50 or so, but there are at least 3 really big ones in the US, and I guess none in Europe. Or do you know a single European cloud provider? I don't.
No, not really. Not a real European company, no.
No. Any preference? So if you take the top 3, I guess it's Google and Amazon and Microsoft. But do you have any preference? If you were to guide some customers saying, I want to move to the cloud, which one should I choose? Do you have any thoughts about that?
The honest answer, which is also most what we always suggest to the customers is the technology that we know of, that we are good in, that we have experience in, because if that's the only thing we can talk around, and if they choose another cloud solution, then they should turn to another company. So I cannot sit here and say that you should choose this or that, because it depends on so many things. But if you want to buy from me, you should choose either Azure or AWS, or maybe Google Cloud. Mm-hmm. We have more projects around Azure than the others.
Seems like it's the most popular one in Sweden, I think.
It definitely is. Yeah.
Have you got a view? What's your view of why Azure is popular in Sweden? How do you understand the market? Why is it like this?
Well, the easy question is that Microsoft is more popular.
Yeah.
And the next question is why Microsoft. I don't know. It's
but
it's been like that for years.
Yeah,
many years.
Do you think it's a dependency to like Office and Windows software?
Probably so. Yeah. Probably.
Yeah, but of course, even in America, of course, a lot of people have Office and Windows, but still AWS hadn't. There's also the whole idea that Microsoft has always been a quite strong vendor, has a good, strong representation in Sweden. Whilst, when did Amazon come to Stockholm? Like properly, like 5-8 years ago, and now when did?
Yeah, something like that.
So of course, then Microsoft is much more ingrained in the Swedish IT industry. Could you say it like this? So, and if I now spin on that, it means they've been around and understood the enterprise environment and how to sell, and they have all these licenses. And maybe that is a way of doing it in Sweden that may be a little bit different than American companies when AWS comes in and they don't have all those relationships and understanding for the big.
Yeah.
I don't have a clue, but I can sort of see the spin on Amazon starting up in a lot earlier in US. They built that whole journey, and really Amazon is starting from a way back on the sort of infrastructure of how to work and sell and support that I think has something to do with this.
And then also, if you look at the companies, Amazon versus Microsoft, don't you think that Microsoft as a company is more popular? It fits quite well into the Swedish society.
I'm eager to say my personal views on this, but I should.
Now I want to hear Anders' personal views.
No, but Amazon was the first and the biggest, of course, in cloud providers throughout the world, and they are doing amazing things. And it's one of the, or if not the most valuable companies that we have. Yeah. But they also perhaps. I don't want to say this. There are buts. Perhaps we should leave it at that. But
we've talked about it before, so it's nothing new. I mean, like we can all question Amazon's. Amazon as an employer, as an example. Amazon's values, as an example. Amazon's sharing to the open source community, as an example. So there are many ifs and buts that sort of you are milking the market, but are you really contributing to the society? Or to the open source communities, etc., etc., etc. So I think that is a valid understanding. If you now want to do, we are talking about CSR, right? How are we responsible corporates? Somewhere down the line here, that should matter, right? I think it could matter. There is another angle on this. When we talk to, we have had several people now that comes more from the how should I put it, the platform industry like Spotify, Epidemic Sound, and all that, and it's very clear that they have been going a lot towards Google, and when I talk to a lot of my techie friends, and who's really the coders in there, actually the favorite GUI seems to be Google. I mean,
yeah.
So if you had the free choice as a techie person, it's quite interesting, yeah? You would agree on that?
Yeah, for sure.
And why? Okay, so why would you as a techie person think the GUI of Google is nicer?
Well, it's not about the interface only. I think the interface is good, but I think the interfaces for the others are good as well. I think more it's about the underlying backends that they have, the network infrastructure they have, the hardware they develop themselves, and especially all the add-on services that they do add on top of the hardware. I mean, the cloud is so much more than managing hardware. It's really the main part of the cloud is the services that you have on top of that.
But who has the deepest catalog today? It has to be Amazon.
Yeah,
right?
No question.
So the deepest catalog of services win to Amazon, right? And where does Microsoft win? Nowhere.
No, but Microsoft is awesome, of course, in many ways. And I think one of the awesome things is the hybrid cloud solutions they do provide, which is, I think they started with that.
Yeah.
And now everyone is trying to follow as well, but they actually are leading, I would say, in that type of technology. And
with the whole SQL story on-prem and stuff like this.
And just adding, the services they do have even on-prem and being able to, keep the data a bit more safe and keep it, in-house in a way that perhaps the others can't do.
So it's interesting. So Google, sorry for going off track here, but Google is smaller. It doesn't have the whole catalog, but it does really well, I guess.
Yeah, so the quality is high and the quantity is not that high perhaps, but the quality of the services they do provide is really good.
And having the right services, that matters.
Yeah,
we have seen a lot of more demand for Google Cloud
you have, huh?
the last year or so.
Oh, you have seen it as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, to just sum up, I think there are pros and cons with each of them, and you have to see what your needs are, basically, as a company to choose what works for you, right? Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Perhaps you should move into a topic you brought up a bit before, and I think you like, which is recruitment as well. And it's something I spent so much time with and so much frustration with as well, because the software, I think, at least, that do exist today for recruitment is not good, and not very analytical either. What's it would be fun to hear, what's your favorite way of recruiting, but we start with just the software and the tooling around recruitment. What's your thought there? Do you think it's good today? Do you think what could we do to improve it?
I think it's difficult because you can never leave that to a computer to give you should hire this one. But in the early stages of recruitment, like answering a few questions that are standardized or that are aimed at finding that specific talent that you're searching for, whatever, that could be good. The right background, the basic knowledge or whatever you're looking for, depending on the position you're.
Perhaps it's better to start with, how do you do recruitment? How would you personally do it if you were to hire a new data analyst or something?
First of all, we need to, either they come to us and ask for an interview, and that happens quite a lot. And either that way or CV gets presented to us from headhunter. So that's two ways usually. Or we get a tip from someone that this is a good person. So that's the way how we find them. And then we always have 2 interviews and one more, who are you as a person? And this is us as a company, and is it a fit? So, and if it is, we move on to the next interview, and that's always...
So fit come first.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, for
the
sure.
Personality, definitely.
I fully agree, fully understand.
Yeah. And the second interview is the more techie one. Do you have the skills that are needed, or the basic skills and the possibility to gain new skills? That's the second interview. And then we move on to a couple of tests, both online and also more a deep interview. So you have to pass these 3 steps at least. And then depending on if they are questions, they maybe want a lunch with a consultant or whatever, it's different things. But those 3 steps we always
starting perhaps with the first one, understanding the personality, the attitude and whatnot. Do you have any tricks in, how to understand that the true personality and if it's good a fit or not for the company?
It's not data driven at all. It's only gut feeling.
Yes.
No, not really. We have certain things that we want to tick off. It's not standardized, but we want to be at least 2 people involved in it. We are not a big company, but we seek to have at least 3 people meeting the candidate, 3 or 4 people, and that is about 10% of the company. And if everyone says go, then we think that it's a good match. So we're not very data driven to that.
I mean, it's hard to measure personality in data, I guess.
It is.
If someone had a good answer for that, I would love to see it as well. But I haven't seen it either.
And that's kind of my point. It's quite difficult. And then there's another side of it. It speaks against what I just said. You don't want exactly the same people every time. You want to be
diversified team.
Yeah,
and all
in every sense.
A good team is a balanced team. All this.
Yeah. Exactly.
But
so,
does that mean sometimes when you now go out and look for something that now we're looking more for this personality because that's the gap in our current team, so to speak? Does that come up as also from a personality point of view? Or is it more like...
Yeah, sometimes. If someone or a couple of people have left us recently that are very driven in doing things internally or very outspoken or very extrovert or whatever, or has some kind of speciality, they are very good in a certain technology, then we need to search for that person, that kind of person. But personally and personality and technology. But mostly we don't have any vacancies. So we look for the right person.
So they have to come to you more or less? Or you don't have any open postings at all? Or?
Yeah, we do have. But what I mean is that we don't have any vacancies that needs to be filled.
No, rather the opposite.
Yeah. If we find the right person, we will always find an assignment for that one.
And where are you on your journey now? Is Helikopter is the ambition to be this sort of size company, and then you do that really well and grow, or you know, some companies wants to double in 2 years and all that. So where's Helikopter's mind on?
We say that more or less.
How you want to
about
what's the feeling of the company where it should go?
We don't want to be to grow too quickly, so we need to do it in a good pace. So like 10% growth, not more than that.
And why is that? I kind of agree with it, but I want to hear your thinking around.
Because if you add more people into a group, it changes the group too much. And if you want to change the group, that could be a good thing, but I don't want that because we're a good bunch and group of people. So
you're valuing the current culture, and you want to evolve that culture in a evolutionary way.
And you have to be really careful with that. So it's extremely important, I would say. And
what is the culture you want to cultivate? What is the culture?
That's a good question.
What's the Helikopter culture?
I know exactly what it is, but it's very difficult to put it in words, of course. You have to be eager to learn. You have to have the possibility to learn. And you also have to want to share your knowledge. So that's the most important thing, I would say. Then you can add a lot of, you have to be at work on time, you have to be
but it's
consultancy minded, whatever,
but it's
a lot of things.
It sounds like learning and sharing.
Yeah.
Caring. Learning, sharing, caring.
Yeah, that's 3 good words, yeah. I might steal that from you.
Please do.
So, yeah. And it's not anything, I mean, most IT companies do that because our biggest competitor in a way is that every single consultant in my company could be on their own any day. So we need to add some value in belonging to the group. Then we need to keep the group a good group. Sharing.
Maybe this is a topic we could take maybe in a bit, just to understand the state of the industry and the state of consultants, because I think you're touching a very interesting point on the job market. I think especially in Stockholm, I assume it's more like that in several countries in the world, but Stockholm has this flavor, like there's a lot of things popping, from one company into another, becoming freelancers. So there's a lot of movement. So, but maybe not now, but that's the topic I think could be quite interesting to hear your story about.
I mean, just to finish off the process you have basically to hire, and you had the personality part, and you have some more techie part as well. How do you? It's a lot of question there. How you measure tech skills, and it can be hard skills, more hard tech, or more soft skills. And trying to understand that. Do you have any special tricks that you favor in being able to measure the technical skills that people have?
Well, we can, when we are hesitating, we can always ask them to give us a sample of what they've done. We have a couple of questions that we can give the consultant the prospect to, and more or less it's either they know the answer or they can't. So it's quite easy when you've done this. I've done this for so many years, so it's like I don't even think when I do it. But we have a couple of questions that we always go through. But it depends on what they already know and what they are supposed to work with. So the list of prepared questions can't be too long. Because the main thing is, like I said, the possibility, the ability to learn new things. But after the first meeting, we usually have a picture of what kind of consultant is this, what is the offer to the customer in the end, what kind of assignments can this consultant fill. And then we find one of our current consultants who joins us for the second interview, who asks questions, and usually that consultant has already done that journey that we want the prospect to do. So he can see that, okay, this person is where I was 3 years ago, so I think he's got the possibilities to do what I do today.
Because I think, let's zoom in exactly right here, because I think in the modern society we have concluded it's continuous learning. So our ability to pick, not competence, but to pick talent, and then combine with picking talent with the potential to learn, or how we have defined intelligence, acquire new skills fast. Let's zoom in on exactly that. What is your things and tricks to gauge that? Is this person going to have this ability to learn? How do you pick that?
When I read a CV, I always focus on the in-betweens. Why did you move from this job to that? And obviously, if there is a gap, why? What did you do instead? But mostly, why did you leave? How was your... Did it meet your expectations when you came to this employer instead? And you stayed for 6 months. Why? That could be a good thing if they say that they, didn't give me any development, or it was so easy, it was too easy, I was bored, whatever. That's the correct answer usually. So I focus on the
So actually you listen carefully to the reasons why people are moving, and you're understanding if they are in their rationale is a growth or a journey to learn. So you are in between the lines. It screams actually in the CV if you know how to ask the question.
Yeah, I don't care too much of what they've done on every job. Actually, is a why in between.
That's a good tip in the book.
For tech type of interviews, it's kind of hard. Something I think all companies want to have is diversity, both in gender and age and race and whatnot. And it's easy to perhaps ask questions in the wrong way that favors, one gender, for example.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about that? How do you avoid that problem?
First of all, I try to aim for diversity. I think diversity is a very good word. I do not try to find a woman because we are 60% men or whatever. I think it's easy to go wrong there when you search for something, when you look for something. Diversity is much better to aim for, because everything is important, not just men and women. It's cultural background, religion, whatever, or personality, not the least. But what we usually look for is a little bit of, not the mainstream people, a little bit of outliers in one way or another, because they are usually, it's difficult to explain, but a little bit more intelligent, I would say.
But dare to do a different thing? Or
So, and at least they are more interesting people.
Maybe more fun to hang around.
Yeah, and that goes for not just hiring the right people. It's when choosing which friends to hang around.
And so what you're saying is you're looking for what is making each individual unique, and you embrace uniqueness, and you think it's quite interesting rather, or this will strengthen the group because he's quirky, but he's also unique in this way.
Yeah.
Or she. Yeah.
So, and I think that you find diversity if you do that.
Okay, so personality, and you have some tech kind of interview, and then you also do some tests.
Yeah.
And tests can be very controversial, I think. I know from Peltorian and also in Spotify, we had a number of discussions about this.
Yeah.
And some say, you should have a week to do some really advanced kind of test. But then people say, well, imagine you have some small kids at home. They don't really have the same possibility to do this as people that don't, and things like that. Any thoughts about, what's your preference in doing tests?
Well, I've done a few myself. And sometimes I agree with the results, and that's when I've gotten the job, the assignment. And sometimes I don't. So, you can have a lot of opinions about tests. But the thing is that you have to do the decision yourself. You cannot blame the test. You cannot say that, okay, it was over 200 points, so that's a good result. We will hire him. You have to see it as a suggestion that points you towards one.
And what's
direction.
the underlying reason why you want a test in your 3-step process? Why do you think it's needed?
Go back to the previous question, to avoid for some reason I don't like this guy or this woman because maybe she resembles someone that I don't like or something. I mean, to avoid that kind of
subjectivity. The person, yeah.
No.
So in some ways trying to find an objective yardstick where someone who is brilliant could shine, yeah?
Mm-hmm, yeah. And that could give you a new angle to this decision as a basis for your decision. Okay. And we have used the same, this is what I think is very important, we have used the same test for more than 10 years, exact same test. So we can.
You're not afraid about that getting out in the public and people know exactly what test to do and stuff like that?
No.
Okay.
And it's not about, it's standardized tests.
Can you share any details about it, or do you want to keep it a bit secret? Or
I don't. Well, no, I don't have to keep it a secret. But it's a proper intelligence test. That's one part of it, like the Mensa test, one short one of that. And then if you are thinking 3-dimensional or in sequential, and then it's form logic and numbers, if you're numbers people or not. That gives us a hint of if this maybe someone that would be a good project manager, or is it an amazing programmer because, he's really nerdy and shy or whatever, but he's amazing at numbers and figures. So, that could be that last part, that last piece of puzzle that we need to see the whole person and see his availabilities, his possibilities. So, we see it like that, and since we have used it for such a long time, it tells us a lot.
Have you been able to see some sort of trend, or can you? What was the point with having the same test? It's also like you have a yardstick in a game.
We understand the test.
You understand the text.
Yeah. So because
people who has worked there that took the test in this way, what they ended up. Yeah, exactly. I get it.
Yeah. But then again, you shouldn't. It's always your own decision.
And it's only one. It's like one piece of the puzzle. Maybe that's the point to make out.
Another bit related question is, when to hire people and who to hire, and then it's also, I think, the question of growing people versus hiring people. And I'm not sure if you understand what I mean, but you can, let's say that you have a number of junior people and you want to complement them with someone more senior. You have the choice to either hire that person in or try to grow people. And any thoughts about that first to speak? What do you think? Should one try to?
We don't have to choose. We're a consultancy company, so we want both.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem for me.
But then I guess you want to grow people if you can.
Yeah. That is definitely something that drives me.
Yes.
Seeing someone that is a junior person coming from university, or we are the second employer, whatever, in their career, and after 5 years they are leaving us as a skilled professional. That's amazing. Just love it.
And how do you grow people? I mean, simply, having worked with a number of projects, of course, grows people as well. But is there other ways, or how do you grow people in terms of more soft skills or things like that?
Yeah, that's a problem. That's how do you do that when you don't work with the people every day? I mean, they work. My employees, my colleagues, they work with on site with, not today, but obviously, but usually on site with the customer. And I don't see them every day. I don't see how they perform. I got second-hand information on how they perform. So that's the tricky part of my job. But then you need to learn. You need to understand the people, the individual, and their needs, and talk to them a lot, and be close to them. And try to find trust.
So do you have structures? Like, do you have some sort of, or is it just happening like more organically that you're chatting with your people on the phone a lot, and your team leads are chatting on the phone with them?
It's both. I mean, it's either way. The best way you can make some kind of contact differs. So, but you cannot do it in a structured way. You need to talk to the individual. Because
it leads also a little bit into the whole idea, maybe let's round out recruitment, because I think the whole idea with the consultant industry, consultants, what are we offering someone when we are together in a group? I was now going down the direction, well, how do you keep a group as a group when we don't meet because we are the clients? Yep. But let's finish off the recruitment and this part first, and then we can, I think it would be nice to move into a little bit about group dynamics and consultants and freelance and all this.
Yeah, I think I covered most of my parts of that, but the recruitment, I think, is such an important topic for everyone. I don't think there is any company that don't struggle with it and want to minimize time that you spend with it, but still have as high quality as possible. Is there, just to close, some tip that you would give, like a company similar to yours, perhaps a consultancy, or perhaps a company that wants to simply grow the data science skills that they have? How do they get good talents into their company? Some small tip that you think they could take advantage of?
I think you should look for brave people.
Brave people.
Because when to really succeed when working with, working frontline AI, when you really need skilled people that can continue being skilled, you need to be brave. Because
and brave in terms of what? Can you just elaborate a bit more in terms of... Sorry, if you could just elaborate a bit more.
I think that you need to try things you haven't tried before. Working frontline, really techy stuff, that new things that no one else... You have no one to turn to, you have no one to ask, that kind of when you're looking for that kind of skills. You need to be able to find someone that is not afraid to fail. So therefore I think you need to be brave.
But before we close this topic, because it's very interesting to talk with you as a CEO, Mia, for a 35-man band consultancy in data and AI. Because if you zoom out a little bit, when you start out the journey in data and AI in a large enterprise, well, there are several examples of the more successful approaches, or someone there where they started to get traction, has to be some sort of consultative approach and some sort of team. It's the whole idea, how do I start my center of excellence, or do I start it completely? And there is no right or wrong, but clearly there needs to be a community, maybe a group that could learn a lot from the dynamics of a consultancy, how do we take this journey on now internally? And I there are several examples of where you really could look at it as a consultancy internally at several of the banks right now, at several of the many different industries that has gone down that route, that I think can learn a lot from looking at the successful companies in the consulting industry. So I just wanted to make that connection, that this advice and what we're talking about here, I think, plays into the first steps of it, establishing data and AI competence center or whatever that it can be.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the big companies today, the IT division, department, group, whatever, usually works like, or are expected to be like consultants, internal consultants.
Aha. Now let me not be politically correct. I think one of the major problems that we have right now in the enterprises is that a lot of the internal IT supply organizations that are quite large has, through the operating and governance model and how intertwined they have ended up in a much more reactive approach than what is expected. Or their way to so you meet them and they're really good and all that, but they're more product oriented, or they maybe not be so business problem oriented. So I'm generalizing now. So we have people and IT, internal IT, who is really, really good. But one of the things I have found is, well, they're not so brave. They are not so proactive. They don't really listen to me as a customer, where I'm going. They're more interested in keeping the enterprise IT guardrails that I don't know why they exist. And they're really driven from an IT supply KPI going into the CIO. And we have a cost governance, and we have an infra governance. We are good at this, but have we really flipped to be consultative to create business value? So I think that's where they need to go. The whole IT needs to be more like consultants, but are they there? I'm not so sure. What's your opinion? Because this was a leading question. This was a whole anecdote. It was my spiel. So I'm sorry for that.
I think that both.
You see both.
The whole spectrum exists.
Yeah, the whole spectrum exists.
And I totally agree. They need to, but I think that they are reactive, mostly reactive consultants today, and they need to be proactive.
So I think the bottom line challenge that I typically boil it down to is the reactiveness versus proactiveness, and how they act, how they think like that. But is to some degree a consequence of a steering model that has been ingrained for many, many years, I think. Anyway, interesting. Yeah. So I would like to start at a theme now, and I think this theme around IT and where IT needs to be, and also if data and AI even belongs to IT or if it belongs somewhere else. We could have that conversation a little bit later. But where you triggered me when we talked about Helicopter and the group, and what you said something about also one of the key values of being right now, or you said it like the main competition is actually that some of this, especially the skilled people, they could go out and do this on their own, and they could be freelance. So it's not even that they're leaving you for another company. They're actually leaving in order to start their own company or to become freelance. Yeah. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, and how you sort of understand the state of the industry and what's the trend right now, and how you think about this? Because you were on it already, I think. It's really interesting.
That question would be a lot easier to answer like 8 months ago, because then I could elaborate around the trend and what has happened and the change.
So maybe before Corona.
The whole world is just crazy. And in a way, it's like I've lost concept of where are we today, or where were we eight months ago.
True.
I could almost say that I've forgotten. I haven't, but I don't see the structure anymore. But
so where is it right now? Is it chaos, or where is it right? Let's start in the Corona times. Where are we right now on this
today?
Topic
Today we stand still. Everyone is sitting still.
Sitting still in the boat.
Yeah. for a little
while.
Yeah, I think so. But we have seen the trend
for
many years,
yes.
for like 20 years or so, on and off, more or less. I can't say that it's grown. I don't think it's more common today than 20 years ago. But I do think that when you leave university, that's definitely an option for most people to start your own business, be on your own. And at least after you've, I'm taken an employment for a couple of years and then I start my own business. That's definitely an option for everyone. Much more than 20 years ago. I think that a while ago it was just, I was laid off, so I might as well do this. But now it's more of a choice, I think. I'm speculating now, but that's
your gut
what
feel.
I think. That's my gut feeling, yeah.
And what about the trend of more senior consultants? Or because I feel it like a trend, at least in Stockholm, the last maybe 10 years, but 5 years, we work somewhere, and then we start off our spin-off. We almost do the same thing, and we started small, and we grow again, and then another, that trend I think has been, especially in the BI space, I think it's been really clear. Mm-hmm. Do you see it like that? Or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is it like that? Is it just too much demand? Or why has it been like that for the last 5 years, do you think?
I think it's a little bit for the money.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. They see that they got more freedom being on their own. And then a lot of people go back to employment afterwards because they want to belong to a group, or it was too difficult to sell themselves, or it was...
So the reasons to come back
was
is admin, the sales, or belonging to the group.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
But then if you can overcome that, the money speaks. I think you stay on your own. But yeah, I can't say, I'm not sure where we are going, but I think that overall we are approaching some kind of gig economy to a much bigger extent than what we have done previously. I've got three children, and when I listen to them, they are not talking in these terms, but I can understand that the way they are thinking is like, it's not, I have to get to university, I need to get proper education, and I want to be this. They don't speak like that. It's like, what do I want to do in my life? Where do I want to be? What interests me? I think much more than I did when I was in their age.
I find this the whole new type of network economy, gig economy, and we see this on many scales, on the individual level of people, young people. We see it on collaborations between startups and big corporations. If we all just reflect, in my opinion, take a step back and listen to the conversation out in Dagens industry or whatever, there was no talk 5 years ago about, we need to have a startup community working closely with Wallenbergsfären. So when did that really start coming, this whole collaborative as the next step? I think data and AI topic, or the foundation that we're going into such types of techniques that is so beyond or different to my domain knowledge. So it's sort of landed on the table that we need to find other ways to collaborate. Do you agree? I mean, this is what, to me, the gig economy and connecting it to data and AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And then going back to where we started, the bookkeeping automation, if you can automate that, if you can find a community where you sell each other's instead of yourself, and then you can find the communities for different topics everywhere today, much more easily than you could 10 years ago. So I think you can overcome those things.
Yeah. But to stay a little bit longer on this gig economy, but please, Anders, what's your thoughts?
Let me take another stance on this and perhaps ask another question related to this. So, BI people, analytics people, data people in general usually have a specialty in working with data, and they have, special people specializing in that. But you could argue that will not stay in that way. Rather, that data and AI skills will be a natural part of any role, including bookkeeping and whatnot. So what's your thinking about that? Do you think it still will be like in 10 years from now, still a natural role for like a only specialized data person, or will that be like a natural part of any kind of role that you have?
I think we'll go the same way as, being an expert in Microsoft Office, for instance. I think we will end up being there.
Mm. So it's like a ubiquitous part. You need to know Office, and you need to know data and AI for whatever kind of task.
This is essentially the data literacy journey from Word to being AI literate.
Absolutely. I honestly do believe that. And that makes the difference between the people who uses the technology and the people who builds the technology even wider. So, and what that does to our society is a very interesting question, which I don't know. But for sure, it has to divide us. Either you use the technology or you really understand it.
So here we're talking about the AI divide from a different angle, Mia, which I find extremely important. We have talked about the AI divide from the sort of super giants who is sort of so far ahead of us. But now you're flipping the coin on us. I love it. And we're talking about, is there an AI divide happening from the people who really understand how to build things and the people who are simply good consumers of it? And what was your thinking there? I just wanted to point it out that I thought that was brilliant.
We are doing some techy progress here, year by year. And as I said, as you, like 10 years ago was, we supposed that everyone knows about Word or Excel or whatever. Now everyone is supposed to know about what a data warehouse is, or metadata. Can explain exactly what whatever it is. So those kind of issues, every single young people from university will know these kind of things. So that's why it's so important to learn new stuff every year. For us, we're not really young anymore. And if you are, for instance, using that automated bookkeeping tool, you can only buy its services. But if you can program it and you can sell it and you will earn money for it. So that's a really, really simple example. But if you take that further on to more advanced solutions, it's the same, but the difference is even bigger. I'm not sure how to explain it, but for sure it will have to divide us a lot.
I'm trying to sort of follow you, but you're talking about having the acquired skills to really develop AI, and here we can argue, all right, right now you need to be a rocket scientist or data scientist in order to do all this. We have all this open source technology needs to fit together, and here is the trend to simplify that and make the building of AI not only for rocket scientists, so to speak, but for domain people. So this is one trend. And then you have the whole consumption and usage where I guess that is more and more seamless. It's the whole, cyborg. We think that the best AI seems to be the AI that works seamlessly and integrated with the human decision or the human process. But there are several trends here, I guess, that sort of to talk about here. So because even here, to build AI, you need some sort of skill, even if you use technology like Peltarion. But maybe you don't need the full skills of a hardcore, the guys who codes for Google.
And I think that the more the solution is to be used by a broader public, part of the society, the more seamless it has to be done, the more easily used it has to be easily used by every one that uses the solution. The more complex the solution has to be, the more black box it
you mean complex behind the scenes in order for it to be more seamless as an experience?
And that's one aspect to it. That is who is gaining and who is paying for it. But the other aspect of it is, of course, who is influencing the other part. Of course, it's the one that builds it, not the one that uses it. So then there's the democracy part of it. So I think that we are moving faster and faster further into that kind of society, where we are divided in the people who understands this AI society and the one who just use it.
And speaking about using data and AI and how it will influence our society, Amazon will or have now launched in Sweden as well, and I guess that can have a big impact on the Swedish society that we have and the companies that we do have in Sweden. And I know Amazon is probably the leading company in being data-driven and using that for whatever they can to really drive their services. What's your impact? How do you think, as these kind of tech giants grow and coming to Sweden as well in an increasing scale, what will that do to Sweden, you would say?
Oh, what a difficult question. In what sense do you think?
Okay, so
in what area? Because of course,
let me give a concrete example then. Let's take a Swedish retailer. I'm eager to say name, but it can be some electronic retailer or some kind of clothing retailer or whatnot, and they do recognize that they have not gone that far in the data journey, so to speak, and they're not that data ready, and they're certainly not AI ready today. But they probably need to. Or how should, if you were to advise them, they're sitting there, they're hearing Amazon is coming and other companies are growing, and we have no cloud provider in Sweden or Europe. How should we handle this? How can we still stay alive? Can they simply hire, helicopter and guide them in their journey to become more data ready, or what should they do?
But do they really? You need Amazon as cloud.
No, it's more the retailer. Amazon joining us as a retailer, right?
Yeah. So they've been here as a cloud for a long time, but now they're also launching as a retailer.
Okay,
but with limited success if you look at the initial kind of translation issues that they had and whatnot in Swedish. But
that's an interesting question. Was it really that bad? It was a lot of. It was with a big bang. So
perhaps you can elaborate. What do you mean? Because people don't know. I think what happened. Do you know, or how would you describe? I don't want to use the terms that they had in some of their products. Okay, but they had really poor way of launching in Sweden.
I think we can use. I think it was Russian infantry that was translated to Russian toddlers. I think that was really funny, and not use the other examples.
Mm. But still, if you were to guide some company that are right now perhaps a bit behind, or they feel a bit behind in becoming data-driven and starting to use AI, what should they do? I mean, shouldn't they be afraid about the big companies coming to Sweden, or should they?
I think they should. Yeah, they are big competitors for sure. But I think that this is why I didn't really understand the question, because you cannot become data-driven by using technology. You have to start in the other end. I mean, why?
Oh, awesome. Good.
For starters. And then you have to change the whole organization, because that is what you want. You want people to react upon the data they get. And then you have to build the technology around it to support them with the data they need. But first of all, you need to understand that what kind of data do we need to bring the value that we need to, that we want to get us where we want to go, and where do we want to go, where do we need to improve, which processes do we need to change or whatever. So that's never a technology issue, I would say, that the technology is a tool to help them to be data-driven.
But this is
the issue.
But this is really awesome, because it's almost like we get scared by the rattling of technology. Now Amazon is coming, And sort of the knee-jerk reaction is not to think about how to improve the business or what the value is, but the knee-jerk reaction seems to be, we need to have the same tech. We don't know for what or what we're supposed to do, but let's go and buy some tech.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like, because it's tech-driven, we are almost throwing our senses out the window and just buying tech. Mm-hmm. And I think you summarized that really beautifully. You know, why they should really be afraid, but don't buy tech. Understand your business in the new environment. But this is an interesting dilemma here, because to me, then they need to understand their business better, but they now need to do it in the new in the new society, or let's call it a data and AI first society. And we're circling back to this Venn diagram and the whole challenge that these guys has the data and AI capabilities, these guys have the domain capabilities. So now these guys come here and they seem really smart, and they are Amazon. So and what they need to do, they need to stay and understand their domain, but then they need to move into the Venn diagram core, so to speak, and understand that, okay, if my company is going to live here now, how will my company look like? Mm-hmm. Which is quite different than to just abandon your brain on your domain and just look at tech. But it's focusing on your domain and then understanding and having the literacy, what can the tech do for me? Yep. And it's a little bit like I think it's classical enterprise. We need to go to cloud, yeah?
Yeah.
And, I don't know why. Let's do it. Exactly. How to do it, lift and shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary, and it's a good way that how you flipped it. I like that.
I'm not sure I'm that satisfied with that answer, actually.
Okay, continue then. No, then I am satisfied with that. But you have another answer, maybe?
I'd like to hear from you as well.
Yeah.
And perhaps, do you have any good or bad stories from your time at Helicopter? Perhaps how companies are trying to become more data-driven and perhaps fail at some points or succeed at some other points. Anything you can share about that? Without naming names, perhaps, but...
No, I don't want to go into any customer stories. But I can, just give an example from my previous experience at one of the fund companies where I've had assignments at. I don't want to tell you which fund company. They had acquired a lot of, a couple of smaller fund companies. So they had a lot of mutual funds. Like, when you buy investment funds, they are named with the company name, and then Sweden Fund or Europe Fund or whatever, those kinds of. So they had a lot of Swedish funds, Swedish investment funds. So they wanted to merge those into one fund, and that's obvious. We save money from it, and this is not really data-driven story, but whatever. It's so obvious that if we do that, the management of a fund is quite expensive. You need someone to buy and sell shares within the fund, that those guys are quite expensive, so they just needed one instead of five. So some obvious things that they did to save money. And then I just asked the question, when I saw the plan, they had a lot of mergers planned. So I said that I was handling the finances back then. So I asked them, how do you know which fund to keep? Because they were all merged into one fund that they kept. And I said, why? The best fund. Okay, how do you know which one is the best? And he only knew that how it performed. He didn't know the full P&L of that fund. So this is, whatever it is, it could be shoes or whatever. But they didn't, the solution was obvious, but they didn't use all data. And I've seen this so many times over the years where I've been working, that you think you don't go deep into the details. You think it's obvious, and then you don't ask anyone else. You think you know the truth, you never know. When you work in a company that is bigger than 10 people, you never know it. Not even then. So you have to talk to a lot of people. So here's where the what you need to do. You need to discuss what value are we looking for. In this example, they were looking for saving money. Okay, we want to save money. Where do we get the information? Okay, we get it from there and there and there. How do we gather the information? What technology do we need for that? Is it the ERP system only, or do we need data warehouse or whatever? So that is the process that you need to follow, and that is generic. You always need to follow this process. Where do we want to go? Where's the information, and how do we handle it? What model and method do you need to use for it? So without naming anyone, I would say that everyone reaches this pitfall.
Okay, I see that. But I guess
You're not happy with my answer.
Well, I like to be concrete, and I understand that you don't want to share details, so I won't push you on that. But if we speak a bit more in generic terms and just perhaps name a number of challenges that companies have to start being a bit more data-driven, at least. You can think about many things. It can be simply the lack of data that they don't have. It could be that they don't have the infrastructure to manage the data in a good way, and they try to do it on-prem perhaps and from scratch. Or it could be just the legal issues and being afraid about being sued for GDPR or whatnot. It can be simply the knowledge that people don't understand what you can do or should do with data and AI and analytics. And the problem with the tooling and the tech, and it's being rather immature, etc. If you try to just rank, all of these kind of challenges, is it something that you think is of extra problematic, so to speak, to get started to become more data-driven?
I would say that the people are scared of change.
Scared of change, yeah. That's a good comment, I think. And how do you fix that? How would you, if you go to a company and speak to them, and you can feel that they are a bit scared about changing the way they work?
You need motivation.
Yeah.
You need to scare them not to change, or motivate them. You will gain this, or you will get that.
Yeah.
If you do. Like, for instance, in the society today, you will catch a virus if you are meeting people, stay inside, and you do that without any problem. Who would have thought that we would do that a year ago? If you're motivated, you change a lot.
I think the coronavirus is an example of we can actually change much faster than we think.
Yeah.
And the extreme level of digitalization, I think a lot of industries have seen just because of Corona, is extreme. So, it's a clear sign that we can change if we have the right mindset, right?
Absolutely. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I would say is that people don't really understand what it is. What is data-driven? I'm data information. Yeah, I have information. I act upon my information. Everyone does that. But to really understand it, it's what data do we have, and where do I get it, and what can I do with it? And if you ask someone in any organization that hasn't really thought this through, they can't give you a proper answer. And that goes for me as well. So it's not.
But isn't it as simple as, can you really articulate your problem, your business problem, sharp enough? And now you're adding another dimension. Can you translate that to an analytical problem or a data problem? And that's simple, being so concrete on what your business problem is, so you truly understand how data will solve you. It seems very simple when we talk about it, but I think, we fail already here. Oh, I need a BI solution. You're talking about tech now, and I know I need a report. Still talking about tech. You're not going to get rich from a report. What's your insight that's going to lead to decisions, to actions? And this whole conversation, do we do it enough, or do we just jump into it too fast?
We definitely jump into it too fast. Definitely. I think then it's always there's always a tech solution for everything. If you've got enough money, you can solve anything with technology, you think.
So then
today's problem, but you don't really do that.
So scared about change and then having to follow it through to have a crisp enough why, to really understand your why, really, really crisp.
Yeah.
But what is the why? What is, being data-driven really mean? Do you have a good definition of that?
I think to make decisions based upon information and not gut feeling. And that brings us to another thing. Do you really want to be data-driven? I mean, would you like to be data-driven when deciding who to marry? Or which house to buy? Yeah, maybe about the house, but you go into when you first walk into your house that you really want to buy, you feel at home, you like it, you feel secure, etc. It's not how much it costs, etc. Not really. That takes away the too expensive ones. But I mean, when you decide which ones which houses to look at, but you don't want to base it on data, really. Definitely not who you marry. So when do we want to be data-driven?
I'm eager to argue that point, but okay. I think it's a dangerous point to.
Come on, tell us. I'm interested.
No, but I think there's a difference between like these kind of one-off decisions you make, like buying a house or marry someone, and something that you do like every day. Yeah. And if you want to minimize the time it takes to go from home to work and transport yourself or something, you don't. That I think would be awesome to be data-driven with, right? But I think you can argue that from like a mathematical kind of deduction proof point of view, saying if that's true for these kind of many events happening, it should also be true for few events happening. But I think the problem then is how do you really collect data for that, and how can you really trust it? And I guess trusting data is the core of the issue in this case.
Yeah.
If you had data that could really tell you, even for buying a house, this is data I truly trust, and wouldn't you use it?
Yeah. And maybe that's, we are not really there yet, but when we are, maybe, yes. And that's the same thing when we go back to recruitment, the recruitment process. I wouldn't want to have that completely data-driven. But if I could, yes. But I think
why do you say you don't want something to be data-driven? I mean, if you had 100% trust in the data, that will never be the case, of course.
If so, yes. Hypothetically, yeah. Definitely.
So it's a matter of lack of trust for data and or not even having data, I guess, for some decisions.
But it would be really boring.
Why is data boring? I don't get that.
No, data isn't boring, but not making decisions, walking into that house that don't think that's no house for me. And then you walk into the house and, this is my home. You wouldn't get that if you were.
I think you're on to one point that I think is really interesting. And I always try to promote at least data should not be making decisions itself. It should always be done together with humans, because AI, especially today, is of course very, very narrow and don't have the domain knowledge and the deep knowledge and reasoning capabilities that humans do. But what they can do, or what AI really can do, is go through a large amount of data. And you can't really do that as a human, but they only have like a shallow understanding of it. Yep. So it seems, at least to me, that this is perhaps a perfect example with, if we can combine data with humans and then use humans for what they are good at, the gut feeling that you can have because you in some way understand you have the background knowledge and the reasoning capability that an AI is very, very far from having today, then you get best of both worlds in some way, right? Yeah. I don't know. That makes a lot of sense.
And Mia, how do you look at another angle on data-driven now? So data-driven based on that we have data-driven decisions. So it's sort of the data scientists, advanced analytics, we know what to do. So what about data-driven from an automation point of view? So now we're talking about recommender systems, so building things which is ultimately, maybe even using neural networks and that kind of stuff as a new data as a coding paradigm. Is that data-driven? Is that something else? Is it two different sides of the coin? What is advanced analytics? What is sort of machine learning, engineering, automation?
Just to finish up on the last discussion a bit, because we spoke about this quite a lot at Spotify, actually, about data-driven versus being data first or data only. So it's three different terms here. Data first, data only, or data-driven. And I think we argue a lot. We do not and never want to be data only. And the meaning with that is even if you have data about how someone is using some part of some service that Spotify has or whatever company have, that data can be wrong. It may be lagging data, it may be noisy data, it can be missing data, it can be a lot of problems that cause the data to actually not show, or you can't really draw the conclusion you think from the data. So unless you can interpret the data, it can be really dangerous to just use the data. So being data first means you do trust data, but always have human in the loop. Would that be a good description of how you see it as well?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Even for marrying someone?
Maybe even for marrying someone.
Data none in that case, perhaps. Yeah. Well, cool. I think that's an important topic. You should never be data only. I think that's really dangerous to be.
Yeah. We can definitely agree on that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, sorry, Henrik.
No, and then moving on now, data-driven now. Okay, how does that relate to data for insight and that we then act upon, or even taking the whole sort of automation path here? Is that data only when you do automation? I don't think it needs to be.
Well, I think automation should be phrased properly. If it's so dangerous, I think, sometimes to speak too abstractly. So it's always easy to have some example in mind when you speak about these things. So let's take automation, but let's take something like let's take medicine or brain tumor detection, and you want to be able to build a treatment plan for a cancer patient. And you have a number of images from some CAT scan, and AI is good in some use cases, but it can go through these images, hundreds of images that you have of the brain very quickly and very accurately, like circle the area that potentially have a tumor, but it can't really build a treatment plan. For that, you need a human. So you can automate, yes, but you can automate a part of it.
Yes.
And as long as you do that and recognize that, I think automation is great. But it's not about replacing humans, it's about taking or augmenting humans to do things in a more efficient way. So instead of humans going through hundreds of images manually, you can automate that part of it. But then you have to always, of course, have humans still in the loop somehow.
Yeah.
So that's at least my view of automation, yes, but not about it's not automation only. It's automation first. It's
automation first.
It's like data only.
We coined a new term here, automation first. But
I think not automation
because
only.
I was a little bit hinting also a little bit like we had a conversation here where we sort of contrasted. Is there a difference between with the techie guys, machine learning, engineering, and advanced analytics? And the whole idea with advanced analytics, yes, we are trying to build an insight for someone to make a decision on. So then it can be very much around context. You need much more to understand the more statistical side of things. Whilst if you go to a very narrow AI, and we go down to this example like here, the statistics or the neural network becomes really sharp, and you can program it on a very narrow space. It's not really advanced analytics in the same context as we grow up with BI. So here we are coming almost to a new coding paradigm on how to code and letting a computer look at the vision, computer vision. Mm. So for me, data-driven also here is sort of, it's a little bit like of course I think it's both, right? But I think it's sometimes we end up talking more about data-driven as, more an advanced analytics. And then if Spotify is a good example where you really build recommender systems, right? What do you think I think it's worth mentioning. Of course, not automation only, but automation first. But I think this data-driven do two different ways.
I think automation is the wrong term to use, actually. I don't like that term.
Well, maybe that's good. I mean, so what should we call it?
It's augmenting humans more.
Yeah,
it's actually stealing from Arrow, I think, a bit in H&M as well, and they speak much
amplified intelligence. They say in H&M, amplified intelligence.
Yeah, and augmenting is basically the same thing.
Yeah.
But being able to use AI and data analytics for what it's good at, augmenting humans so they can make better decisions, is, I think, a better way to phrase it. What do you think, Mia?
Yeah, I agree. I think so too. And I think that when taking that. Another thing, when this example of scanning pictures of supposed tumors or birthmarks or whatever that could be really bad for you. There's automation to go through a lot of amounts of data. Just maybe you cannot do it at all because it's too much.
Exactly.
Or it's to take away boring stuff to take us much quicker towards that point where human being is needed.
As an example,
And maybe you need both. Like evaluating pictures, is it a tumor or not? Maybe you need both. Maybe you need the computer that never gets bored, that never zooms out or whatever when looking at the pictures. I don't know if you do it like that way when looking at pictures, but supposedly if you do that. And then have someone educated that can evaluate it, a human being, to do the same thing. So you can do it for different reasons, and maybe both in sometimes. So as always, we use terms very sloppy sometimes, and we need to know what to be very stringent about what we actually mean. Automation. Machine learning, AI, whatever, it's used very randomly.
It is, for sure. Just to end, perhaps another example that I think is fun to see, we work a bit with Folktandvården, or a Swedish public dental service, and they basically want to minimize the prescription of antibiotics. And it's a big problem today, and it causes resistance and for these bacteria if you prescribe too much. So now they have a lot of humans going through old reviews and trying to decide, was this a correct prescription of antibiotics or not? And in some cases they find it's wrong. But that is an extremely boring, as you say, task. Imagine going through like thousands of old journals and trying to make a decision from that. It's not something that the human should do, probably. I mean, perhaps by combining human and AI, so AI can at least say, these are probably the most probable misprescriptions, so to speak, of antibiotics, and then humans can review at least the top ones. Perhaps that could be, I think, a good example of how we can use the best of both worlds, so to speak.
Yeah, I think so too. But
Cool.
but if all the boring tasks are taken away, or if you take away all the easy tasks that anyone can do, that's another thing. What will happen to our society if that happens?
Well, the truck drivers, so 33% of the American population that is truck drivers, and soon we have self-driving trucks.
Yep.
What will happen then? What do you think?
I think that we will get to the point where we don't want automation anymore. Because what else should we do? We need something. Most people need a job to go to.
But don't you think there will be new jobs coming up that haven't been before or existed before, thanks to AI as well?
I don't think that we will find as many new jobs to cover all the jobs lost.
Yeah, I hope you're wrong, but there are actually...
Me too.
There are some reports from Gartner and McKinsey and others that actually think that it will be net positive when AI is rolled out. It's a positive view, and I hope they're right. Yeah. But it could be the opposite, of course, as well.
I think that the effect of the AI transformation in society is overall positive, definitely. But I do also think that we need to change the society and the way we are... still working 8 hours a day, really, since
but imagine,
many years.
I sometimes get a bit frustrated when I hear, we will lose jobs. Well, don't we have enough things to do? We have so many challenges in our society today. Imagine Corona today. Imagine the horrible problems we have with the medical care that we have. We have too many things to do today. We have too much poverty. We have too much lack of education. We have so many challenges in our society. We have an environmental and climate change happening. We don't know how to do that. We have too little time to even do it. So, having a lack of jobs or things to do would be a luxury, but we're so far away from even being close to that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think, we should instead think, if we can automate more things, we can start to work with the really important challenges we do have today, that we don't have time to even do today, right?
Like, for instance, take care of our own health.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
exercise an hour a day or something.
Yeah.
If everyone did that, we would live much longer and wouldn't need as much health care, etc. So I'm sure we could think of a lot of things to do with our time instead of working.
There will be no lackage of work, but I do think, however, it will be a need for lifelong learning, and you mentioned that a number of times as well. So these techniques can help us be more efficient. It can help us to automate some parts of different tasks to make us have time to do the important things that we need to fix in our society to make us simply more happy. But I guess we need to transition, and we need to change the knowledge as well that we do have. Yeah. And how should we do that? Do you have any thoughts about how to improve lifelong learning and be prepared basically for the future that I guess is coming in some way?
I think that the school system needs to provide that kind of education to our kids.
But for the lifelong learning part,
how to learn, you mean?
How to learn, yeah.
Okay.
So you're basically saying, well, we're not here to cram you with information anymore. We are here to really make you ready for lifelong learning.
Yeah. I think so. And I think they do to quite a big extent. What I've seen from schools today is that they do that much more than they did 30 years ago. I don't have any statistics.
So it's meta-learning in some way. It's learning to learn instead.
Yep.
Yeah. I wish the schools could do that more for sure. But even for your own company, how are you trying to make sure that they are, keeping up to pace with all the amazing progress happening all the time? Do you have any plans or thoughts about, how to make sure that your own employees will?
That's definitely an important task for me. So I need to see to that they use the hours everyone use the hours that they get to learn, to educate themselves, to gain more knowledge, because they have time to do so. And also, for every new assignment, they need to learn new stuff, and they need to use their experience to take on new.
And I guess that's the case in your type of world, that every new assignment they do get is some new type of tech, some new type of problem, some new type of domain knowledge perhaps that they need to understand, right?
Well, that's the easy part. When there is some special part, a new technology they need to learn, that's really easy. The difficult part is that this is a more demanding assignment, demanding in every way. How do you gain knowledge to take on that?
What do you mean? I don't really follow you there. So more demanding, what do you mean?
Like,
more
for
complex.
instance, you more complex.
Political.
For instance, more politically complex organization, or maybe you move on from a developer to architect, or whatever step you take. That is not, okay, I've been working with Azure, I'm moving on to Amazon instead. That's more easy.
That's manageable.
Yeah, definitely.
So what do you mean? The personal growth is a problem, or is it
It's not a problem. It's never a problem.
It's a challenge then, or
it's a challenge. The challenge is to provide everyone with enough challenge every day to grow, and provide them with, make sure that they have the, they are brave enough to take on the assignment and do the scary stuff. And
but is the problem to have a lack of challenging tasks to take on, or is it the problem that people are not basically brave enough to take on the challenging tasks that do arrive?
I think that I'm not. This is like I'm sitting here talking about my colleagues. It's not like that. I'm talking about people in general, and that goes for me as well. I think that as I said, I don't think we are in general data driven. I think that we are in general driven by our feelings, and mainly we are driven by the strongest feeling that I see, at least, is fear of failing, fear of whatever. So therefore you need to be brave. That's what I meant previously. So I think that coaching people that it's never wrong to fail. It's never wrong to fail once. It's almost never wrong to fail twice. But if you not learn and fail the third time, then you need to learn how to learn, so to say. And so supporting people and building that community where it's okay to fail and where it's okay to ask for help and support each other. That's very important.
So building a culture in your company to make it people feel it's okay to fail and be brave enough to take on challenging tasks.
And that is important in every organization. Everywhere.
Yeah, well said, I think. It's an important part for sure.
What are your biggest fears? Are you afraid of failing? Or anything else?
Well, I go up on karaoke stage, so no. No, but I think, Daniel Ek in Spotify said one thing, very nice way, and I'm paraphrasing him, now, but basically said, Spotify is going to be the company that fails the fastest. And that sounds strange when you hear it, but when you really think about what he meant, it's really profound, I think, and important. I think it's basically what you're saying as well. It's basically being, you need to try many things before you find what really works. If you put all your eggs in one basket and that breaks, then you're out of luck. But if you can do things, 10 different things at once, and fail fast for the ones that does not have a good promise or doesn't seem to work, then you have a much bigger chance to basically find the thing that do truly work. So being able to fail fast is much more important than being safe in that way, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important mindset to have, I think.
Yes.
Cool. I think we are starting to run out of time here as well. And it would be fun to hear a bit more what's next in your life, Mia. Do you have something planned coming months that interesting for us to hear about?
Yeah, running a company always involves doing planning for the next year in October, November, December. So we're in the middle of doing that, setting up the strategy for next year and planning for finances, etc. So I'm looking forward to a normal year.
You think that will happen next year?
No.
So your budget is not a normal year yet?
Not yet, no. Well, financially, it's gone amazingly well, actually. Not at all what I expected. Like half a year ago, I was expecting the worst, but it's been much better than I thought. We are in a good spot in the market, I think, to survive financially and to do actually really well financially. But still, it's like everyone is holding on to their desks and everyone is holding on to what is the core business. No big projects are being planned, etc. So nothing really new is happening. So I'm looking forward to that normal, to find amazing, challenging new projects to take on. So that would be amazing if we can get that in 2021, I think. But then I expect to continue supporting our customers with new amazing cloud solutions with automation and
if you look more than 1 year and think 10 years ahead, what do you think the difference will be in how companies work or how you work at your company?
I think that the companies in 10 years will have much softer edges than what they have today. And what I mean is that you will have your community with sub-consultants and former colleagues working, or employees working 1 year, and the next year they are traveling around the world and then they come back or whatever. I think that we are thinking more of a community than of companies. Exactly how that will look, I don't know, but I think we are moving towards that.
Sounds like a good future, I think.
I love that vision.
So yeah.
Softer edges, softer contours, community.
Great. As a final question, can you recommend someone that you think would be good to have on this show that you would like to listen to yourself?
Yeah, I have 2 suggestions. One is just a wish. I think it's difficult. It's difficult to you have to choose your words here, but I'm a big fan of Jordan B. Peterson. Not a fan of exactly everything he.
Why didn't you say that earlier? As well, actually. Okay.
Not actually what he thinks about everything, but
maybe you can do at least 2-3 minutes for the people who doesn't know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Will you?
You can go 5. You're allowed to go 5 minutes at a time. You please.
Okay.
I think you should do it for sure.
So anyway, he's a psychologist and he's an author, and he has gone viral. Not the recent years, but a couple of years before that.
It's been on a bad year the last year, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think he was most famous for his comments about transgender people.
Yeah. In Canada,
yeah. And what I like about him is he's very controversial, but not really controversial. He's both he is and he isn't. But what I like with him is his way of argumenting around things and his way of getting to the point with, if you're asking me a question, he answers exactly what you are saying, or he says, okay, I interpret that you are saying this, and therefore answering that question instead of what you just said. He's very to the point, and that is exactly what I like with him. So that would be really, really interesting to hear what he thinks about the future of AI, for instance.
He is an amazingly brilliant person and very rhetorically skilled person, I would say, and knowledge in psychiatry for sure, and very controversial yet. If someone wants to have something fun to do during the weekend, I would recommend that they Google for the Channel 4 interview with Jordan Peterson. Yep. Have you seen it? Or?
Yes, I have. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So they have a famous quote in that interview saying, so what you mean to say is, so every time the interviewer says, tries to there is this term for this, I don't recall it right now, but she's trying to interpret, his answers in a completely different way and always turn it around in a way that they normally get away with, but not with Jordan.
Oh.
They're trying to lead him on.
Say things that he's not really saying.
And then he just point them, no.
He basically says, very annoyed, no, that's not at all what I'm saying. That's completely wrong. And he can really, identify when people is trying to do that type of thing. So he's an awesome person. I wish also that we could have him on the show, but I think that will be tough.
Do you have someone more close to Stockholm?
Yes, and I've been around for a while. One person that has been quite courageous in against authorities and fighting for personal privacy is Jon Karlung, the CEO of Bahnhof. And that also could be interesting in listening to his view on things around
cool
AI.
Idea. Awesome. That's a cool idea.
Thank you very much, Mia. It's been a pleasure, as usual,
Thank you for having me.
Have you here and all the discussion. And I hope that we can go and watch some Jordan Peterson interviews soon.
Yes.
Or have some additional discussion about him in the after work.
Yeah, so that's the benefit now when we can put this show up and have a look at it together.
Yeah.
Mia, thank you very much. Super nice.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.